They're depriving younger, less experienced workers of the opportunity to suffer through that work, but develop judgment while they're suffering through that work.
Quantum physics impacts our life in many ways, and it actually impacts classical computing as well when you get down to a certain size. So these are not, theoretical things, they're very real.
Well, today we're going to talk about another topic that has been kind of a recurring theme for us, but we're going to go deep on it. And that is how humans need to learn and be taught and interact with AI and the impact in the workplace.
Right. And you and I have been, again, I don't know, we tend to go down some of these tangents sometimes and, wanted to be different, but we kind of caught on to it, I think, very early in the cycle about the importance of critical thinking and maintaining good judgment. And it's been a topic that you and I have discussed probably 100 times on and off camera, and certainly in front of clients. We've spoken about the necessity of good judgment and critical thinking skills and how they appear to be lacking in many cases, or they're just not, it's not taught anymore, I think, is a big part of the problem as well. So yeah, this is going to be a really, I think, interesting discussion. When we came on this article, I think it kind of brought it home for us and articulated it in a way that was really clear.
Yeah, and the article teed up the problem in a very, very clear way, and then we had our own thoughts about what the path forward is, so we'll get into all of that. So first, the articles, it came out fairly recently in the HBR, the Harvard Business Review. It was by David Duncan, and the title of the article is How Do Workers Develop Good Judgment in the AI Era? And I thought it was a very well-written article, very easy to understand. If you're interested after hearing us talk about it, do go sign into HBR and check out the article that David Duncan wrote.
Yeah.
So do you want to kind of tee up what was the premise of the article?
It's teaching judgment in the modern age of AI, and it's that's the high level of it. But I think the deeper problem is ultimately, how do you teach AI? How do you teach judgment in the era of AI? Because paradoxically, AI, in eliminating, or I can say, I hate to use that term, but reducing the need for junior employees, at least at this stage, at that point in your life, when you really develop judgment, they're not going to learn it anymore. So it increases judgment, but it also takes away. So it's kind of it's a bit of a paradox.
It was an interesting paradox. So let's work our way up to that paradox, which I think is sort of the crux of the article. And let's start with judgment. Why is it that people are even talking about humans needing judgment in the AI era? For those who haven't heard us talk about this before, let's talk about what is the role of people evolving into, or what might it evolve into?
Well, you and I, again, we've hit on this multiple times, and that more so than ever, you need those judgment skills, those ability to assess what's coming out of artificial intelligence models, and you cannot accept it for just face value, that they are statistical tools and they're not always right, and that you have to really think about what you're being presented with. And what we're seeing in the marketplace, and I think, unfortunately, what a lot of the frontier model providers have basically said is, you can just put these tools out and magic occurs, and that is most definitely not the case. But I think,
and so we land at this concept that has become sort of widely accepted of human in the loop, right? And the idea is that human in the loop is the final judge, if you will, the final circuit breaker to make sure that what the AI is doing is accurate, appropriate, correct, ethical, or any host of other things, right? So that human is sort of supposed to be the ultimate arbiter to make sure everything is working okay.
But the author brought up a really valid point, and I think one that we had overlooked, which was the human in the loop. While it's critical, it's not a role where you're going to get judgment knowledge. It's really a control function at the end of the day, and you're not necessarily developing the skills of judgment through that human in the loop. So you might put somebody that's younger into a human in the loop type of a role, but that individual doesn't have necessarily the skills or the deep business knowledge or the domain knowledge or whatever else that they might have learned earlier on in their careers. And that's really super important to have those judgment skills, that knowledge, those critical thinking skills.
In fact, there have been reports from companies that have implemented a human-in-the-loop framework that when those humans are not sufficiently, I'll say, senior and seasoned and experienced, one of two phenomena starts to occur. One is if the AI starts to have some errors that they catch, some documented errors, they quickly start to almost by default override the AI. They lose confidence. They don't trust it. They take this absolutist approach. It was wrong a few times, so now it's going to be wrong all the time. I'm not going to trust it. Or even more insidious is that if it's right significant portions of the time, and these again are less experienced people who may not have deep expertise of their own in the topic, the process, whatever the model is dealing with, they just start to defer to the AI. And in either case, it's either over-reliance or under-reliance on AI, but in either case, they quickly stop being effective humans in the loop, which defeats the whole purpose.